Supergirl Season 2, Episode 2, Last Children of Krypton. Now, not only do they have, of course, the last son of Krypton kind of reference title for this episode, but they also have a Crisis on Infinite Earth reference in this episode after Superman and Supergirl first fight Metallo, where Superman gets up and he picks up Kara, and she's kind of like laying in his arms. That's a reference to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like that's one of the covers. I don't think that's like the only cover, but it's one of the covers for Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's Superman holding on to Supergirl. So I thought that was actually really cool. They also had another reference to Supergirl's history in the later scene when Jean and Superman were fighting together, and Jean was this little blonde girl in the Supergirl outfit. I was like, oh, that's a cool little reference. Because, of course, Supergirl, as we know, is naturally she's blonde. Like, when you normally see her in comics and animations, she's just full-on blonde. So I was like, alright, I actually like that. That was a kind of cool little reference. They have her with, like, the straight-up, really bright blonde hair. And I was like, that was a cool little, super fast little reference to just throw in there. Like, they have, for most people, it's like, oh, there's just this little girl randomly in a Supergirl costume, but I think for people like me, it's like, oh, the reason they chose a girl that had like blonde hair and stuff is because that is what Supergirl normally looks like. She has blonde hair, and they just had her like in a obviously small version of Supergirl's outfit. So I was like, all right, that was a cool little fast reference. We got to see the Fortress of Solitude. We got to see the robots again in this episode. We got more cool team ups, of course, with Superman and Supergirl. Unfortunately, of course, this was the one thing that we all knew was happening. I was hoping it would last for 3 episodes instead of 2, but Superman does end up leaving by the end of this episode, and I was really hoping that it would last until the next one. But it was still really cool. We got to see yet another team up. The action starts off pretty fast. It's like, alright, Metallo's here. We got to fight this dude. They kind of get beat up. He takes off. Well, he doesn't take off, but, he in a sense, he takes off because he's like launched through the sky after Superman not punches him, but it seemed like he kind of just pushed him, and it was just like, it's a Superman push, so it made it really funny to me because he was kind of just like, ugh. But this, for Superman, is like, you just flew like 18 miles, and he was just like, ah, and he just flew off into the distance of the night, and that just made me laugh when it happened because I was like, he didn't like, it was like super speed and stuff, and he like rammed into him, but I still felt like, he didn't punch him. It was still kind of like, boom, and he just pushed him out of the way. But it was just really funny because it was a Superman push, so he literally just flew off screen, or he flew so far into the background he vanished. So I was like, that actually just looked really funny to me. But I liked the action in this one. I thought it was really good. I thought the action in the opening scene was pretty cool, and I liked the way they did Metallo. It actually looks... this worse isn't the right way. I guess it's just, it looks gross compared to the normal version of Metallo, which is, he's just metallic. This was like, the dude has his actual skin, and then like this metal centerpiece, which apparently wasn't connected to their hearts, because when Superman, well, they did it for both of the guys, but when Superman and Jean were fighting, and Jean like phases through the dude, and it looked like he took out like a small kryptonite heart, the guy like falls down, and I'm like, oh, he killed him. They beat the guy, he's dead. And then Clark was like, oh, we'll let you take a little nap and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I think he's dead. I'm pretty sure he died. He died there. So I guess that's not the case. And they did it, when Kara and Alex were fighting. Alex like javelined the dude through the chest, and he had like just oil, just like, or whatever, spilling through it because he was impaled. So I'm like, I don't see how they lived through that, but I don't know, because I always thought for Metallo, and it's been a long time since I've seen a fight with anyone versus Metallo, so I just might not be remembering it correctly, but I could have sworn that he basically couldn't die, even if you like took the kryptonite out. That wasn't like his life source, but I don't remember. Like, and I guess that's the point, is that it's not his life source. But the way they did it was like, I don't know, they stabbed him like through the heart. Like, it wasn't like just Metallo. It seemed like they still had human parts to them. So I guess that's what had me confused. I'm like, well, that was still his heart. They just altered it to be like kryptonite, but I guess not. So I don't know. They defeated them. They didn't like actually kill the guys like it seemed. But I thought the action was good, especially the ending sequence with Kara and Alex, because we got to see Alex in like the exosuit, which I thought was pretty cool. So that I really enjoyed. Um, and we got two cool fights at once. I like how they kind of did the cinematography where they would like pan around Kara, and then it would fade to Clark, and it would be like behind them and stuff like that. Or if they would shoot the beams, the Metallos would shoot the beams towards the camera, and then it would like cut to the other beam from the other Metallo. And I was like, all right, that's cool little jump cuts. It was just nice blending of the two different scenes. It was obvious every time, but I was like, all right, they at least attempted to do like the cool little cinematic fades and stuff. So I was like, that's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. The visuals I thought were pretty good for the Metallos. Like I said, the way they did the cosmetics actually looked kind of disgusting, but I kind of enjoyed that element of it where it's like, it's not just, oh, this dude has like, and technically they did. They had like the fake skin, because they do during the first scene, after Clark gets like knocked out, Kara does her heat vision, and it melts off the dude's hand. So they are, I guess, 100% robotic, and it's just like normal Metallo, where it's like, oh, it looks like he's a human and stuff on top. It's just, I saw it with an actual human and not like, oh, it's a cartoon, so, it doesn't look crazy. But I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, all right, they have it with the chess piece and stuff, and, I thought that actually looked interesting, and I liked the way they did it. And just the way they were fighting and stuff was pretty cool, and the way when they would get hit with the beams, it was like going into them, like it was like in their veins, and it was messing with them. I thought that was a nice little effect as well, so I thought that was pretty cool. The one thing that I thought was weird was during the first fight, the way the guy would shoot the chest beams, he had to like pump his chest to do it. I just thought that looked weird when they did like the long shot, when I think Carl was on the other side of the car, and he was just like doing like this. I was like, that just looks weird to me. And I'm like, I can only imagine how that looked without the CG effect of a beam coming out of your chest. It just really looks silly, like he's trying to like pop and lock or something. But I thought the visuals were fine though. I enjoyed the action sequences, and the other big story in this episode was Kara as Kara. She's doing her first day as a reporter, and basically she's told she's not allowed to be a reporter, and so when she goes to talk with Kat, she finds out that Kat is actually leaving, and that was kind of the thing they talked about in the first episode, where it's like, everyone has to just dive. And so that's what she decides to do, and she's going to leave, which I was super surprised by this, but by the end of the episode, we find out that Jimmy's the one taking over for her, and I was like, holy crap, that is insane to me, that he went from, like, he was just the poached photographer to he's like the temporary lead for all of Catco. I thought that was insane. I was like, that's crazy that he'd be the one qualified, but I thought it was cool. It was just a cool way to do that, and so that I thought was cool. Something that they established this in the last episode, but when working for the agency, I thought was actually hilarious in this episode, and how he was just nuts over Superman was just one of my favorite things. And in the last episode, I thought it was funny. But in this one, my favorite part for sure was when he made the little things to block the beams. And he was like, so what do you think? And Jean starts talking. He's like, not you. And then Superman is like, they're great. And he starts crying. That was like that was one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode. He's like, he's not crying. But that was freaking great. And he like hugged him at the end of the episode. He was like, Superman goes to shake his hand, and he just hugs him. And I was like, man, this is just so silly, because he's just like losing his mind. But that was definitely one of my favorite parts, where he's just like, oh, like he likes my design, like, and I liked it too. I thought it was cool. He just made it. It was a simple little harness, and it covers their symbols and stuff. I didn't know they were clear when they first showed them until they actually put them on. I was like, oh, that's actually cooler, because you can still see the symbol. I thought it was just going to be silver on the front and just like a plain sheet. So I was actually glad when they were in the fights and they actually showed them. I was like, oh, you can actually see the symbols underneath. That's way better than just, it's just nothing. Because I was like, oh, they should have, because when they first showed them, I was like, oh, they should have put like the symbols on them in silver or something. That would have been really cool and somewhat of a reference if you know Superman. But they didn't do that, and I was like, oh, that kind of sucks, because that was a really cool opportunity. And I was like, oh, they're clear plastic and you can still see the outfits. But I would have loved it if they did the silver symbol, which I won't really talk about what that means for people that don't know. But that still would have been really cool. And it would have been cool even outside of a reference. I just would have liked to have seen a different color S. That would have been sweet. But I liked it. It was simple, very simple design. We just use it for the end fight scenes. But like the action, we got to see a very interesting move. By the way, by the end of this episode, where Clark's whole reasoning for not working with Jean kind of came to light. Like that was kind of the whole point of the episode when they found out who Metallo was. And it's like I thought, the DEO had all of this stuff. I thought you guys had every single bit of Krypton or Kryptonite, on the planet, which technically is every single part of Krypton on the planet. And it's like we had some. We may or may not have mole. Like Jean was in. He was like, we don't know that it's a mole. He was really, he was doing everything he could to not be wrong in that situation. I thought it was kind of funny. He's like, we don't know it's a mole, but we definitely lost this Kryptonite. So I kind of like that where by the end of the episode, they find the guy. Well, that guy ends up dying when Alex chases him down with no backup, by the way. That was a terrible idea. But naturally she survives, and that comes in during the reflective period between Alex and Kara, where Alex is really mad that Kara's like, she just wants to take off and stuff. But, they have their reconciliation, and they go through all that. They get all the Kryptonite that they can, at least, and they give it all to Superman. So if any other Kryptonians come into play, which it seems like that is exactly the case by the end of the episode and the promo, excuse me, they'll be pretty much defenseless. I don't know if Alex had Kryptonite inside of that exosuit because it was like glowing green, and honestly, if it's Superman or Supergirl or anyone with super in their name, I'm gonna think Kryptonite when it's green. So I don't know why Kryptonite would be used in an exosuit unless they were fighting Kryptonians and it's like, hey, check it out, Kryptonite, you can't get super close, or you're at least somewhat weakened by it. But maybe that's Kryptonite. I kind of doubt it. Like, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. But they gave up all their Kryptonite, and that was a cool move on Jean's part, where he's like, you know what? Here's all the Kryptonite we have. It's in a lead line box, of course, and Clark takes it. I'm assuming he took it to the Fortress of Solitude. That seems like the most logical step to me. But I was like, alright, that's a huge step. Like, I know they aren't doing the whole thing with Kryptonians again because they're really going, Cadmus. But at least this next episode, because it's like, Clark, he takes off, he goes back to Metropolis, and, he takes all the Kryptonite and stuff, and it's like, they have the little scene where Kara's sitting, and she's like, I won't let you be alone, and stuff like that. Dude flips out, and the first thing he does is choke her, and it's like, well, that's a mess. And then then it just goes right off, and it's like, all right, we'll see what happens. And based on the promo, it seems like way more Kryptonians come into play. Like, they were the woman who I believe she was fighting Kara during like the last little clip in the promo. It seemed like she had like orange beams shooting out of her eyes. So I don't know if she was actually Kryptonian or if she was just a different alien or something. But this one guy's Kryptonian. And maybe these other people followed him. Maybe they were all Kryptonians trapped in whatever the place was that they mentioned before, where time doesn't actually pass. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. He may turn out to be just a full-on villain. He may turn out to be a possible hero that's like, I gotta leave because it would be too cool to have two superhuman characters in every single episode, per the standard of every superhuman show ever. So that might be the case. He might be a villain. He might be good. We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see who these other characters are in relation to him. But based on the dialogue, it did seem like that other woman who was fighting against Kara was also a Kryptonian. So maybe they did all come from the same place, and maybe he sends out a signal or something, and that's able to bring the other ships down or something like that. But I am excited for this next episode. I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with Catco. Like, they have Cat taken off. I would assume we aren't going to get too much of her, like, separate storyline or anything, but I feel like there's got to be something there that they're going to give us. And then we also have Jimmy taking over, for Catco. I think that should be interesting as well. And that might put him into a couple of predicaments like Cat was in before, where it's like, oh, she's the head of Catco, just to pick the random famous person and make an example. it might end up being Jimmy now. It's like, oh, he's the current leader, you know, of Catco and stuff like that. So that might put him into a few more predicaments. We'll just have to see how all that plays out. But I really enjoyed this episode. Sucks that Superman took off. You know, I actually really, you know, like I mentioned for the premiere, really love this guy as Superman. I thought he was actually really awesome. They had a great scene at the ending too, like when he finally lands. First thing, you know, he's texting his cousin like, yo, I miss you. Like, it'll be cool to hang out. And then right after, he's like, oh, hey, you know, like, yes, I'm back. I'll never leave for that long again. And they had another funny line. I wish I could remember what it was. He was like, I'll have it to you in a jiffy. And he's like, oh, well, a jiffy is like a unit of measurement and stuff, which I never knew that that was an actual thing. But, hey, that's how it happens. But I thought that was funny. I thought that was just a great way to end it. Where you know, he's like, you know, I'm Superman. You know, it's really cool. It was great hanging out with my cousin and stuff. And it's like, oh, gotta be Clark Kent, gotta be super nerdy and stuff like that. So once again, I think they did that really well with his character. Excited to see him come back because not only do we have, you know, a cool, you know, new Clark Kent, but in general, we just have Superman and Supergirl together, and that's just gonna be awesome every time it happens. They don't even have to talk. It just be like, hey. And then they fight some people together, and it looks cool. Like when they stop the robbers, which was hilarious to me. You know, car destroys the car in the front. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, they did a bunch of dumb stuff. Because first off, I mean, they couldn't run either. So, I don't know. Like, there's literally nothing to do. But it's like, oh, I thought she destroyed it, but clearly she didn't because they were able to back up. And then they bump into Superman, and then they get out and just start shooting them both. And the first thing I thought was, man, they don't live? Like, these are the bulletproof people. And then the one dude tries to punch Superman, and he's just like, dude, the bullets don't work. Why the punching? And, you know, they just, like, knock the two guys out. And he's just like, I never understood that. I was like, that was one of those cheesy things where it's like, that actually works. I thought that was funny. It's like, you know, just like, why would you do that to yourself? And they just beat them both up. So even little stuff like that, it's just entertaining to watch. So, like, I think I was having as much fun as Kara was. I'm like, this is just fun. They just hang out and they just beat up bad guys. It is freaking cool. So, excited for them to come back whenever that'll end up happening. But I am excited to see where they take this season, and I'm really excited to see what they do with Cadmus. I assume we aren't going to see Metallo again in the next episode, especially with, I'm assuming, you know, these other Kryptonians coming in. We still have to figure out what the deal is with this guy, but I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts, and I want to know what you guys think is the deal is with this, you know, new Kryptonian. He wakes up, it's TV, everybody loses their mind when they come out of comas, like, that's just TV, it's like, and I attack somebody, so whatever, you know, that's like, that really means nothing. That's just a suspenseful way to end an episode on TV. But he could totally come out like, I'm so sorry. He could be like the nicest dude ever. But I want to know what you guys think his story is. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. And of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about these last two episodes with our new Superman. Do you want him to come back soon? Do you not want him to come back soon? If they announced already, which I doubt they will, but if they announced they were going to do a Superman show with this guy, would you like that? Would you not like it? I don't know when he's coming back, so I kind of just want to pile all these questions in right now. But I want to know what you guys thought about him, what you think is the deal with this other Kryptonian guy, and of course what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.